Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about a very tricky topic. The best combat widths as of the latest version of the game, and especially how important combat widths really are. To do so, we are going to use this amazing spreadsheet. I will explain how it works shortly, but please mind that I did not make this. I found it on Reddit, so all credits to the author. I will also include a link to the original Reddit post in the description of this video. One last thing before we start checking combat widths. I regularly post new content and I will keep you updated on future changes to ideal combat widths, templates and designs. So please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's talk about optimal combat widths. Now first of all, let me explain how to read this spreadsheet. The easiest and most obvious way to read it is the following. Red is bad, blue is good. More in detail, however, we can see how most templates are now absolutely viable. What we really want to avoid are only the very small ones that you can see up here and the very big ones that you can see down here. Now, if you had to base your evaluation just on the color, you could easily say that 15 is now the best combat width. But things are not quite as simple. Now, the colors in this graph stand for a number. Higher is red and lower is blue. This number is a representation of the penalties that these divisions get when attacking. A good example is in the first column for marsh and mountains. You can see how a combat width of 25 would get absolutely no penalties. It's full blue and the number is 0. And that's because it perfectly matches the width of the terrain. So technically, to get the perfect width, you should always have dedicated divisions matching the width of the place in which you're fighting. You should always only use 25 width divisions in the mountains and 30 width divisions in the jungles, 35 width in plains, deserts and hills, and 40 in urban terrains. Most of the time, however, this is quite impractical. So what this graph does really well is highlighting, here in the last column, an average of the performance of each width, considering also how common the various terrains are. You can see it up here. Now, weighted average between number of attack directions and between different terrains, weighted by how common they are. Now, there is no Bible for combat widths, because if you're fighting in a theater with almost only jungles, you don't care about the best average template, but the best one for jungles. That being said, most of the time in a HOI4 run, we tend to fight in several different terrains over the course of a run. Thus, we want a solid template that can perform well in all of them. So if we go back to the graph, it would seem that this template is the 15 width one. As you can see, it has the lowest average number for penalties of all of the combat widths. But is 15 really better than the other ones? Now, as I was saying earlier, you can notice how excluding stupidly small and large templates, smaller templates tend to have less penalties than bigger ones. You can see how it's more blue up here and a bit more green, orange down here. This is, however, counterbalanced by the fact that by being smaller, they have worse base stats than their bigger counterparts. So if we go back to the game and check my offensive infantry division, this is a 30 width template, and let's say that we want to reduce it to 15 width, because we said that 15 is the optimal combat width. So let's go on and do that. And here we go. So we changed our 30 width division into a 15 width one. So now we have the optimal combat width. We have the lowest amount of penalties. Yes, but at the same time, we have much worse stats. So if you look up here, our soft attack, one of the most important stats, at least in single player, is 266. Why? And the defense, let's check only these two for the comparison. 266, 378 versus 500 and 582. So as you can see, we had much worse stats, which means that if we make them fight against each other, the 15 width template would show a better efficiency because it has less penalties, but it would still lose every single fight. Now at this point, you may think that we should go for the biggest possible width with a relatively low amount of penalties. Say, for example, if we go down from here, the first one decent would be maybe 38. We only have a penalty average of 3.66, so let's say 38. Now, a 38 with a template would definitely win against a 15 with one, and would also win against the 30 with one that we checked earlier, despite having a lower efficiency. And that's because these penalties are very small in any case. Again, except for these red ones, which have big numbers, the difference between 3.6 and 2.9 and even 0.4 is very minimal. However, these penalties are not the only drawback of a bigger template. Now let's use my armored division as an example. I also removed the logistics company to show the extra supply use. Bigger templates are more expensive in terms of military production and manpower. This is maybe not the case because this is armored, but if you were using an infantry division as big as this one, then it would be a lot more expensive in terms of manpower. So smaller countries may not be able to afford them. Now, bigger templates again use a lot more supplies, making them highly impractical for low supplies theaters. Now, even if you're playing a major, having two armies of 15 width may be better than having one army of 30 width. For example, if we had two divisions of 15, we could assign them to different fronts if the supplies are low, or we can assign them to the same front if we are fine with the supplies. So they offer more flexibility compared to this bigger one. Another important consideration is that this spreadsheet is very good for seeing offensive penalties, but naturally we use our divisions also for defensive purposes, which are absolutely not showed in here. So, which ones are the best combat widths? The best combat widths are the ones that you can see in this tab in blue, unless you need dedicated divisions. So if you're going to fight in the jungles, try to aim for 30 with divisions. If you fight mostly in the mountains, 25 will be perfect. If you need to take a city, actually, let me make an example here. This may be quite interesting. We have a Discord server. By the way, you're welcome to join. The link will be in the description of this video. And a few days ago, one of you was asking me how to conquer Istanbul. He was attacking Istanbul from different sides. A lot of allied forces were in there. He couldn't get it done. So I suggested creating a 40 with division, because he was attacking a city. And since he was also attempting a straight crossing, I suggested adding flame tanks to the division. And after struggling a little bit with his special 40 with template, he managed to get it done. Now, 40 with templates are not really practical nowadays, because as you can see here, the average penalties are very high. So 40 with templates are not generally good, but they were very good for him in that situation. Now, this is to say that despite the fact that here you can see the ideal widths, this is only one of many factors that you should consider when making a template. Please do not become one of those combat with meta-obsessed people. It doesn't have to be 15 to be good. It doesn't have to be 27 or 30 to be good. So when you see someone making, say, a 32 with template instead of 30, don't go on and tell them, you know, that template is garbage, make it 30 or 35. That template may not be as optimized as a 30 with or 35 with one, but it's still going to perform amazingly because the difference in penalty is very low in any case. Moreover, that division may be designed for one thing in particular. I'll make a stupid example, but say that you're attacking from 4 directions in the mountains, then the 32 division is perfect, while the 31 is terrible. And say that you're fighting in forest and jungles, well, the difference in penalties here is very small, and the 32 with template has more divisions in it. So it's very likely that the 32 with division is going to perform better than a 30 with one in forest and jungles, and that's not as situational as attacking from 4 sides in the mountains. If you look at the penalties here, 27 is better than 30 because it has lower penalties. On the other hand, 30 is bigger, it has better base stats. So depending on the situation, this 30 with the division may perform better than a 27 with 1. Now, some of you will say, well, but these penalties multiply by the amount of divisions that you have. Of course they do, but the better stats also multiply by the amount of divisions you have. So between 27 and 30, the more divisions you have, the more this penalty is impactful, and the more the base stat increase is also impactful. Now, keep in mind another thing. Base stats are affected by other things, such as doctrines, which directly improve the base stats of your armies. Superior firepower is a good example of that, since it directly improves the base stats of your divisions. So 28 with or 27 with divisions will benefit a bit less from superior firepower than 30 with ones. At the same time, 30 with ones will benefit a bit less than 32 with ones. So finding the perfect balance in here is up to you. The main point is avoid the red ones because they are bad, clearly bad, but don't be obsessed about the other ones. Let me give you another good example. Say that you want to go 30 because you think it's better than, say, 27. But to go 30, you need to produce one more artillery battalion, and you may not have the industry to do that. Now, in that case, of course, it's better to stick to 27 and not to go to 30. Another example that I like making is the difference between, say, 32 and 30, 32 and 35 for armored divisions. Now, if we remove this motorized artillery, our combat width goes down to 32. And 32 is less optimal, as we just saw, than 35. So we would really want to have 35. However, the difference is not as big as you might expect. On the other hand, adding the motorized artillery costs 25 army experience. 25 army experience is quite a lot, to be honest. And you may need that army experience for something else. Now, say that you were researching your doctrines and you needed 30 army experience to unlock this one for superior firepower. Now, by adding that extra motorized to your armored division, you sacrifice maybe a couple of months of war in which you do not have this doctrine. This doctrine is amazing. 25% soft attack on support companies, huge, a lot more impactful than having a combat width of 35 instead of 32. And this is just an example. Another example is 32 is not optimal, so you want to go 35, but you don't have the army experience. Then some people may say, well, just add a couple more tank battalions to it. In this way, you get to a combat width of 36, which is still very good. So you may want to go 36 instead of 32, which is fairly bad in terms of penalties. Yes, but by going 36, you need to produce 2 more battalions of medium tanks, which means maybe you will not get in time for World War II. Or maybe you will get 2 or 3 less armored divisions to use in the war, in the first phases of the war. And that may have a much bigger impact in your game than those little penalties that there are between 35, 36, 32 and 30. I will make one last example. Now, say that we are pushing with these tanks, and with 36 combat width, we have a bit less penalties than with 30. At the same time, the difference is so minimal, and the stats are so good on these templates that you get the push done in any case. Maybe there is a difference in timing of a few in-game hours, so basically nothing. Now, if you used these 32 with divisions, you saved on production cost, you saved on army experience, and you achieved the same exact result. But the pro meta player obsessed with combat widths will have his 2 extra tank battalions in here. He will have the perfectly optimized combat width, and the result is that he gets the same thing as you. The push is done in any case. He achieves it a little bit earlier, but with a much higher production cost. So who got the best value out of the two? In short, this is why you should not be obsessed with combat widths. Go on and check them, avoid the really bad ones, and don't be obsessed about the other ones. This is my suggestion. Then of course you're free to do as you prefer. The single player of this game is great because almost anything can work, so you can really have a lot of fun experimenting and testing new things. But please do not let those people tell you that your divisions are garbage just because this number is 3.9 instead of 2.7 or whatever. trust me, this is not going to make the difference for you. Building a supply hub more and having a little bit more supplies is going to affect your game a lot more than the difference between these two combat widths. Having more planes in the sky instead of those 2 extra tank battalions may affect your game a lot more than this difference in combat width. Saving the army experience for those doctrines is going to affect your game a lot more than the difference between these combat widths. So feel free to experiment and have fun with the game. That being said, I covered these templates in a different video, so I suggest you watch that one. But at the same time, you can easily find here my suggested combat widths for each of these templates. So for my offensive infantry, 25, 27 or 30. Defensive infantry, go 10, 12. Standard, which is the default one I get at the beginning, I try to go 14, 15 or 18. For armored, it's always the same, it's 30, 35 or 36. But again, 32 is totally fine, don't be obsessed about it. Motorized doesn't really matter, but 14, 15, 18 like the standard infantry. Mountaineers try to go 25, of course, because it matches the mountains. But again, something funny about mountaineers. So originally, this template had another mountaineer in it. So it had a combat width of 27, which is of course a bit less ideal in the mountains. So it's better to go 25 than 27. At the same time, do you only use your mountaineers in the mountains? When you play a HOI4 game, do you only always use your mountaineers in the mountains? You never use them on plains, jungles, whatever the fuck? If that's the case, then you absolutely should stick to 25. If that's not the case, you don't need to worry so much about the combat width. Then I use 12 for Marines, the default ones, and 30 for some more offensive Marines, 12, and again the default one for paratroopers, and then military police doesn't matter. So these are the ideal widths in my opinion. But I hope you got the main point of this video. If you want to check the templates, make sure to check the dedicated video. And if you enjoyed this video, also if you agree with my approach, because I feel like many of you will say, no, templates, if you go 27 combat with mountaineers, you're an idiot, they are garbage. You need to go 25. I don't agree with that approach, but if you do, feel free to let me know in the comments, give me some feedback. I'm always open to new suggestions and ideas. I hope this video was useful for you, and I hope it will change your approach to be a bit less obsessed about combat widths. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, it would really help. And don't miss the other dedicated videos on division templates and also tank and plane designs. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.